Okay, so let me start. I will be talking about effects of biomass fuel smoke on maternal health and pregnancy outcomes. So, as you know, biomass fuel smoke exposure can occur in a variety of settings, ranging from residential exposure to wood stoves or cook stoves to community-wide exposure from nearby wildland fires or agricultural burning. The influence of harmless smoke that is released in the air by burning fossil fuel is primarily reflected in the appearance of acute respiratory infections of lower respiratory tract and or asthma. But in recent years, there's more attention drawn to the vulnerability of women and reproductive health outcomes, especially when it comes to birth weight and stillbirth. So the main goal of the present study was to determine the effects of biomass fuel smoke on pregnant women healthy and pregnancy outcomes. So the study was conducted in the city of Niš during year 2018, and in this study, the sample of 1,076 women was evaluated. Those were pregnant women who claimed that have never smoked, so never smoking women, ages 20 to 40 years, who have lived in a part of the town which had low concentration of outdoor air pollutants, and have not been professionally exposed to air pollution. So we, according to the responses that they gave us and were collected by a questionnaire regarding exposure to biomass smokes, the interviewers were divided into two groups: the exposed group containing 523 women and control group containing 553 women. Pregnant women of both groups did not have any symptoms of cardiovascular or pulmonary diseases, or anemia, diabetes, or pathological condition related to pregnancy. All of these pregnant women were enrolled during their early pregnancy with gestational age less than 10 weeks. The questionnaire related to respiratory symptoms and illness was adopted from the American Thoracic Society and was validated for Serbian language. Data on pregnancy was collected based on the physical examinations, laboratory analysis, fetal ultrasounds, and hospital registrations. Multiple logistic regression analyses were performed to analyze the relationship between the health outcomes and exposure to biomass fuel smokes, such as anemia, high blood pressure, and respiratory symptoms or respiratory diseases, and also relationship between pregnancy outcomes and exposure to biomass fuel, and those were related to first trimester vaginal bleeding, spontaneous abortion, stillbirth, and also low birth weight. Exposed women had higher prevalence of all pregnancy outcomes than non-exposed women, but there was not statistical significance. Only prevalence of the first trimester vaginal bleeding was statistically significantly higher in the group of exposed women. So depending on the value of the relative risk, the greatest influence on the incidence of first trimester vaginal bleeding had occupational exposure to gas dust fumes, but also exposure to biomass fuel smoke. Women who have suffered from anemia had a 2.1 times increased risk for first trimester vaginal bleeding. Our results suggest that exposure to biomass fuel smoke may be associated with upper respiratory symptoms, but also with first trimester bleeding. Thank you.
Thanks. Are there any questions? I'm not seeing anything in the chat. Maybe somebody who is here in person. If there are no questions, I have one. How do you control that the exposure is to biomass fuel smoke only? And how do you eliminate exposure to other types of pollution?
I have trouble hearing you. How do you control?
How do you control that the exposure is only due to
I'm sorry,
biomass
you have to repeat
fuel
the question because I really have trouble hearing you.
and not due to other pollution sources?
Well, the women have been placed, or actually they live in the area that had low outdoor air pollutants, and they were divided into groups according to the type of the fuel that they're using in their homes. So the exposed group was the group that used charcoal or wood for heating, and the one that used electricity or gas for food carrying and for heating was actually the control group.